About 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth was formed. About 2.8 million years ago, the first human beings came around. If we represented the time or the event that human beings started on a clock face, human beings would only have started at 11:59 and 59 seconds. Let's talk about that. Hi there, my name is Mr. Ridgway and welcome to another episode of Ridgway History. So today we're going to be talking about where human beings came from and really the beginnings of humans as we know them. Many people don't realize how old human beings are as a species. If we look back to the first humanoids on Earth, it was about 2.8 million years ago in, generally speaking, Ethiopia, in those areas of East Africa, that human beings really got their start. And again, 2.8 million years, that's a really, really long time, considering that, civilization as we know it today has only been around 2,000 to 3,000 years. A very, very long time. Historians and archaeologists really divide early human history into two very broad categories. One is the Paleolithic period, which is from about 2 million to about 12,000 years ago. The other is the Neolithic period, which is from about 12,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago. A big key to understanding early human history is the difference between certain time periods and why historians break them up. So for example, the Paleolithic period, which came first, was really characterized by nomadic hunting and gathering. And then there's a transition where human beings discover farming, and that transition then starts what is called the Neolithic period. But then a very, very important event, especially for historians, happens, and that is the discovery or the use of writing. So historians typically make a divide at this event. Everything before writing is called prehistory, and once writing happens, everything after, we know it as history. So how did early human beings live? From what scholars have been able to figure out, we think that these groups of early human beings had a really, really different kind of culture than the kind of, social organizations that we have now. In the case of religion, many early human beings probably practiced varied forms of animism, which is a kind of belief in the idea that everything has a spirit. If you've seen the movie Pocahontas, it's very, very similar to that movie in that, the raccoon and Mother Willow and even the wind have a spirit to them. Human beings also probably lived in groups, maybe about 20 to 30 people, and these groups, especially before the Neolithic period, but even in some cases after, were nomadic, meaning they moved from place to place, usually following food sources. Generally, gender roles were split, but not nearly as split as they would go on to be in later history. So men would hunt, women would gather, and technology in this case was very, very simplistic, or what we would consider to be simplistic by today's standards. So stone tools in both the Neolithic and the earlier Paleolithic period, simple weapons, and eventually a really, really important invention is fire. Fire is so huge, and most people don't realize it today, but fire allows basically you to pre-digest your food and to intake those calories more quickly, safer, and it also provides a weapon as well as defense. Fire is such an important discovery technologically. So let's talk about the Neolithic Revolution, or as I think it should probably be termed, the Neolithic Evolution. So about 12,000 BC, so again, still in the area of prehistory because human beings have not discovered writing yet, people learned that crops could be farmed and animals could be domesticated. The reason why that scholars and I think that revolution is probably the wrong term is because revolution implies a very, very fast and quick change. Evolution, though, is slow, and indeed, this took a very, very long time to play out in human history. Because, for example, maybe you would try to farm a crop, it doesn't work, and then you go back to having to be nomadic for a while in order to survive. And the big thing here to remember is that people did not switch to farming all at once. It wasn't like they just gave up, hunting and gathering. Most likely, people blended the two until they were able to farm and get a consistent enough food supply. And people, what's a really, really cool thing about history is that people learn to farm independently from one another in many varied locations around the world, which is awesome. It's kind of an interesting development that even though human beings probably did not maintain long routes of communication, that people everywhere in different spots around the globe were able to learn how to farm it independently. The Neolithic Evolution is probably, though, the biggest event and transformation in human history. Let's take a look why. Human beings go from being food scavengers to food producers. Human beings start to make their own food. Farming also, if you start to grow crops, demands that human beings have to stay in one location consistently. And if people tend to do that, they start to build areas or places that they can stay, such as villages. Also, food surpluses start to happen. And when you farm and you have extra food that can last you for more time, that means that you can continue to grow your population as long as you're being supported by that larger food supply. So population also starts to increase. And when people stay together, oftentimes people don't get along very well. So when villages start to be created and populations begin to grow, we get the first development of some very, very early governments in human history. Government, though, is a loose word. We really mean government here as we start to think of ways and means that people begin to get along with each other and to order social systems. Something else that's important about the Neolithic evolution is that as human beings begin to get more things like food or land when they start to build villages, we start to get accumulations of property. Maybe one person grows more food or has more land to grow. The first social class differences begin to emerge. This also could happen because in order to coordinate a successful village to have things going on, you would typically have to nominate certain people to be in charge. So we start to see the very, very early beginnings of upper levels and lower levels of social classes. Something else too about population growth that's also really important is the idea of specialization of labor. It's the reason why you can be in school while other people farm and make food for you to eat. Not everybody had to farm, right? You're sitting, generally speaking, there's times where you're going to have downtime where the plants just need to grow, which means you can focus on doing other things and making other inventions and other tools and focusing on other skills that need to be developed. So technology also continues to develop because of specialization of labor. So you can see a summary of lots of these changes here. And if you want to look more deeply at some of the things that you can definitely talk about before and after the Neolithic Revolution, you can pause this video right here and check those out more in depth. Something else notable is actually how human beings spread out and how we also started to differentiate ourselves from other previous species of hominids. So if we look way back about this spot, okay, there's some sort of common ancestor that we shared with another human species, which is Neanderthals. Neanderthals are the first people to basically leave Africa and head northwards, as well as other places, to the west of Africa. However, there was a split then between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. And when this occurs, Homo sapiens head north after Neanderthals do. Funny story though, lots of people have parts of Neanderthal DNA in them. And that's because when Homo sapiens moved north, Homo sapiens, as John Green puts it, scootily pooped with Neanderthals, who then, after a couple more million years, died out. From there, human beings broke off into lots of different groups of Hoomans, as they are called. So where did human beings go? So after human beings got their start in Africa, they generally moved northwards as well, not only moving into Europe, but also into places like China and Asia, and even into the Pacific Islands. So many people are familiar with the Bering Strait and how human beings crossed from Asia over to the Americas through that route. One route that has been also hypothesized, but again not totally proven, is that human beings may have even sailed, for lack of a better word, across the Pacific Ocean to South America, skipping the Bering Strait. Cool idea, but we don't have any really evidence that this totally occurred. So that's all the time I have for today on Ridgway history. If you like this lesson, please check out other ones that are on my channel. And until then, I'll see you later. Bye-bye!